So, we're going to start with why keto, what is keto switch, and the benefits and how that's going to relate to performance and health benefits, especially in the sport of CrossFit, which we're all involved in. So, ketosis is, most of you probably already know, when we're eating a diet that's very low in carbohydrates, typically under 25 grams a day, net carbs, and high fat, moderate levels of protein. And why the moderate levels of protein is key, and this is where most people go wrong, is eating too much protein. Is protein in excess, so any protein molecules that aren't directly broken down and used by your muscles that you've trained that day are going to be then converted into carbohydrate, and that's going to knock you out of ketosis. So that's why we need to keep moderate levels of protein, and that's the biggest mistake most people make, is they cut out all the carbs and they smash heaps of protein thinking they're in keto, but actually following something similar to like a carnivore diet, which is a totally different thing. So when we go super low carb, our body retrains itself essentially to use fat as its primary source of fuel to provide ATP and energy to the muscles, rather than using glycogen. Now, most people hate it the first couple of weeks because you have to retrain your brain to use ketones as energy rather than sugar and glycogen as energy, and there's kind of like a breakup period or a hangover period where you're coming down off the sugar and you're getting that constant hangry feeling that we've all experienced when we get low blood sugar, as we retrain our brain to use ketones as a primary source, and our brain doesn't like it. So why would I play around with keto? Let's start there. So ketosis, so when we're eating a lot of carbohydrates, you should know carbohydrates, the digestion of carbohydrates in the human body is pro-inflammatory, and the digestion of fat, or the breakdown of fat molecules versus the breakdown of glycogen, is way less inflammatory. So that's one reason we can decrease inflammation by eating a high fat diet or a keto diet, and it's the same sort of thing that in regards to inflammation that we're trying to achieve, or a lot of people are trying to achieve, in fasting. So inflammation is not always necessarily bad, but too much inflammation is bad. So that's number one. Secondly, and the second main reason I'm having to play around with it is the effects on mitochondria. So mitochondria, the cells in the muscles that actually take the nutrients and turn it into energy in the cells, and let your muscles use the energy. So there's some really cool studies on ketosis and increasing mitochondrial biogenesis, so increasing the mass of the mitochondria and increasing the mass, the volume of mitochondria in the liver and skeletal muscle, and also increasing the mitochondria's ability to produce ATP. So what all of that would suggest is if you can have bigger mitochondria, more mitochondria, and they all have a more efficient processing ability, then you're going to have more energy for longer, and that's going to increase your performance. So when we come back into adding carbohydrate back into the diet in higher amounts and performing really high intensity frequent workouts, we're going to have a bigger base to work in at a cellular level of energy production and supplying that ATP. So that's some of the things I'm thinking about in doing this. Secondly, a big one, as you guys know, I'm asthmatic. So asthma is a inflammatory disease or condition, whatever you want to think about it. So I'm always trying to decrease my chronic inflammation level, so cutting out dairy and most grains and any pro-inflammatory stuff in my diet. So going all through the CrossFit season and really pushing those carbohydrates up. Although I'm burning and using all of that energy, you're still having still playing around with high levels of inflammation from training, from having all the sugar in your diet every single day. So that's something else that I'm thinking about is for health and just for my asthma. So that's what I'm going to focus on today. I'm not going to go into all the arguments about keto and cognitive benefits and longevity benefits and all that sort of stuff. I'm just talking about a little bit about the inflammation side of thing, which we know inflammation is bad for a lot of different reasons, like diabetes, arthritis, tendonitis, all the things or cancer, all that sort of stuff. So inflammation bad. And then for me personally, asthma and increasing that mitochondria. So that's where we're starting. So firstly, we're going to talk about how ketosis is going to affect inflammation or be anti-inflammatory. So, like I said just before, ketone metabolism versus glucose metabolism. Ketone metabolism produces significantly less free radicals and reactive oxygen particles in the body. So both of those things are pro-inflammatory. So if we can eliminate them or significantly eliminate the amount every time we are metabolizing ketones versus glycogen, then we're going to have a lot less pro-inflammatory things in our bloodstream from the get-go. And then you've also got an increase in adenosine, which is naturally anti-inflammatory fighting ingredient in nature. So now you can go, there's a lot of different articles and things that go more into depth on that, but there are two things that have been shown repeatedly over and over and over and over and over to be solid, pretty tried and tested reasons how ketosis is anti-inflammatory. So you're getting less of those free radicals and reactive oxygen proteins when we're metabolizing ketones, and we've got an increase in adenosine, and that's anti-inflammatory. So two major ones. So that, and I won't go into anything further than that you can read through all the studies that I'm going to put down below and see it over and over and over and again. And then you see some other stuff some say this works, some say it's not present, it's present, doesn't work, it works. So I'm just sticking to what I can see repeated over and over and over and again. So then we've got mitochondria. So like we said, the mitochondria turn nutrients into energy, particularly ATP. More energy equals better performance at a cellular level. So we've got more cellular energy, we've got better performance and better overall health also. So that's what I'm super interested in that sort of thing. And to go into, you can increase your mitochondria with like high intensity training as well, but that's besides the point. I'm talking about on a diet level, especially this time of the year. What can I do from a diet perspective that's going to help set me up to have far more benefits in performance than just trying to train more when I'm already training at a maximum level every single day? What are the little points that I can change in my diet? And just like you try and go to the sauna, you try and go sleep better, you try and do massage and all these things to help recovery, to increase your performance. If we can play around with ketosis or being fat adapted, and that's going to increase at a cellular level the amount of energy that my muscles can create, then that's going to give me a lot greater performance benefits than doing an extra session of Airdyne a week. So now we want to talk about like exogenous ketones, so keto switch, and something called GoBHB, or as you might have seen it before, beta hydroxybutyrate. Okay, and that's its role in the body and how that it can help. So BHB can be anti-inflammatory, staying on the inflammation side of things, because it blocks a type of protein called NLRP3 inflammasome. Okay, so I don't know a whole lot about it, but I know it blocks it, and that NLRP3 inflammasome is a protein in our body that reacts to and causes inflammation, responding to like injury, fever, toxins in the body, excess carbohydrate, glucose in the body, and all that sort of stuff. So if that's present too much in our body by eating a large amount of carbohydrates and shitty choice in carbohydrates consistently, then we're going to have increased inflammation, because our body is going to be hyper reactive and over responsive to everything that's going on. If we have like toxins in the air, you know, we're reacting to pollen in the air, something like that, and this protein is always being released, it's driving up our inflammation. So if we can try and block that a little, obviously you're not going to block it totally, but blunten that response, then that's going to decrease our chronic inflammation. So for me, and being an asthmatic, the less chronic inflammation, the more of a dampened response I can have to my airways overreacting and responding to irritants in the air or inflammation in my body, the better. So for example, if it's a super windy day or there's heaps of pollen, like at the moment where I live, there's heaps of pollen around and flowers and stuff like that, my asthma flares up. You know, and being asthmatic, your airways are hypersensitive all the time, and you're trying to like find ways to decrease that inflammation. So if I'm at like, say, a 7 on my inflammation scale, well then I'm sort of feeling like I'm nearly on the verge of having asthma attack, or feeling tight-chested already from the get-go. I then add exercise to that, and I'm just going to have a massive like episode of asthma. I have to like use my Ventolin, or I can't compete or complete that exercise properly, and that's happened to me in competitions, in the open, if I'm stressed out. It happened to me at the games this year in the first event, all that sort of stuff. So I'm always looking for ways to try and negate that and keep that down. So I've moved states to warmer areas, to areas that are, you know, got less irritants in the air and all that sort of stuff. Trying to pursue a life where I don't have to take any sort of medication for my asthma. So now we know that when it comes to power output and you know, repeated glycolytic work, we need glycogen. We can't be keto, and I've said that before. Keto doesn't work in CrossFit. If you're a CrossFit competitor and you're training more than once a day, or training more than once a day above your aerobic capacity. So if you're doing like a Phil Maffetone heart rate piece for an hour, you might not burn a whole lot of glycogen, and then your next session is a CrossFit workout, you might be fine in having a very low carbohydrate diet, because you're going to replenish that glycogen over the next 24 hours before you do your next high intensity workout. As soon as you're doing more than one, you know, CrossFit class or high intensity workout, or you're doing a longer endurance piece above that heart rate and you're really burning a lot of carbohydrates, like a sort of a race pace or anything like that, then ketosis doesn't work. Now, there was an interesting study that's just been done, and I'll link it, that has said like low carbohydrates being in ketosis doesn't hinder power output. But the thing is that I only did one, and it was up to 25 minutes. So they said like, it's bullshit you have to have all these carbohydrates to produce the same amount of power, blah, blah, blah. But the study only did like one session a week. So that's whatever. Like if you do one really hard, high intensity workout a week, then fine. I mean, it might be good for you to play around with being in ketosis or something like that. But you know, for most serious CrossFit athletes or people that do high intensity sort of type training multiple times, or they do, you know, strength, and then say like strength workout in the morning, like a HIIT class or something like that, F45 CrossFit in the afternoon, ketosis is not going to be your best bet if you're really looking for performance and constantly making improvements in your performance. You're gonna feel that effect of not having glycogen in your system, and you're gonna feel flat. So we know we need carbohydrates for performance at that high output level. So I'm not saying that I'm going to be keto. What I'm sort of doing is, you can do carbohydrate cycling, also known as keto cycling. So I'll be in ketosis all day, and then at night time I'll have a significant amount of carbohydrates, 200 grams plus, whatever I need to refuel my muscle glycogen for the next day. So then I'm back in ketosis by the morning, and I'm staying in ketosis, and I'm getting the benefits of, like, when I'm doing my endurance training, and all the benefits to mitochondria, inflammation, and then I'm also replenishing my glycogen at night time. Now, obviously, when my training volume goes back up and I'm having to do like CrossFit style workouts and weightlifting multiple times a day. At the moment I'm doing like a strength training, a long endurance piece every day, and then maybe like one CrossFit style workout. So it's a lot less glycogen demand for me at the moment, and I can actually feel really, really good, and like I have way more of an even energy across the day. And keep in mind, that might be because I'm also just coming down from this insanely high training volume, getting ready for the CrossFit Games. And by comparison, what I'm doing now is a bit different, but also I have way less sugar in my diet at the moment. I'm not having any Gatorade or sports drinks or anything like that. You know, I'm eating super clean, and I'm staying in ketosis all day. I'm not in a calorie deficit. I'm not doing any sort of fasting or anything like that, really, except for overnight. And I'm staying in a ketosis, keep my blood sugar way down, no insulin, and then at night time to replenish my glycogen, I'm having those carbohydrates. And there's some really interesting studies on being in constant nutritional ketosis versus doing this carbohydrate cycling, or keto cycling as it's traditionally called, or like it's called now, and actually having much better effects on inflammation and insulin sensitivity, etc., by doing cycling in and out of ketosis versus staying in ketosis all the time. So click through all these studies that I've got in my thing, in the link below. Now keep in mind, some of these studies are like long. So I'm just like taking the best bits and giving them to you guys, but I'm going to put them there so you guys can read through them and see if I'm wrong or I'm right, if you agree. Now, is keto switch, am I only going to use this while I'm playing around with my lower carbohydrate and increased endurance sessions? No. So being in ketosis is a good thing, okay, like we've already talked about. BHB though, there's been some really good studies on BHB. One on obviously decreasing inflammation, like I said, but two, there was a study on cyclists done when they took a sports drink with water versus so a blind study. Half of the guys took a sports drink with, mixed with water, like Gatorade mixed with water, and half of them had the BHB added into the sports drink, and they had a massively faster refilling of glycogen. So the BHB helped refill the glycogen into the muscles quicker, and they surmise why is that the BHB gives us an increased insulin sensitivity. If we have a better insulin sensitivity, then our body's going to be able to shuttle those nutrients more effectively and faster and get that glycogen now back into our system. So when I'm increasing my carbohydrate intake using this pre-workout, the Keto Switch pre-workout is then going to allow my body to, as I'm taking those carbohydrates intra-workout, post-workout, get those carbohydrates into my muscle cells significantly faster and help me either keep performing in that workout, perform later that day, or recover for the next day, the next event, etc. So whether you're playing around with keto or you're trying to shuttle nutrients more effectively and faster back into your muscle cells, this is either, Keto Switch I think is the best product with BHB in it on the market, and it's got a whole bunch of other stuff in it, which I'll link in the thing. You can look through it by yourself, but also including BHB into your workout wherever you get it from. Next study looked at performance until fatigue. So like an AMRAP, cycling for meters, 20-minute AMRAP. The cyclists who had the BHB plus the carbohydrate versus the cyclists who just had a carbohydrate or sports drink, Gatorade. The guys with the BHB and the carbohydrate, on average got an extra 411 meters in the same time domain. So this is similar to when we look at the effects of heat shock proteins and sauna on increasing endurance. Obviously through different pathways, but that's what we're looking at. What's our time to fatigue, or what is our output in a certain amount of time. Now when we talk about CrossFit tests or sporting tests, like anything where it's for time or for meters, running, swimming, triathlons, anything like that, if we can do more work in a lesser amount of time, or we can work for longer, then obviously that's better. And now why is that? Well, two reasons. BHB significantly up to 60% less lactic buildup, and we've got an increase of oxygen utilization both at a muscle level and at a CNS level. So we're going to be using less oxygen to create the same amount of ATP. So when we're using incredibly high amounts of oxygen for a long time, we're going to have more ATP. We have less lactic, and we're going to be far more efficient at converting any micronutrients in the cell going through the mitochondria and producing more energy out the other side way more efficiently. So all those things from one supplement, it's pretty crazy. So I mean, I don't talk bullshit, and I'm trying all this stuff out on myself. Another thing to add is you can also add essential amino acids to your carbohydrate drink, and that has been shown to increase the glycogen shuttling back into the muscles as well by a lot. So I'll have amino switch in my Gatorade, and amino switch, I've also got my amino switch in my keto, mixed with my Keto Switch. Now maybe if I mix all three together, I could just sprint and never get out of breath. Who knows? Anyway, that's why I'm playing around with keto at the moment. I think intermittent fasting and ketosis or fat adaptation and getting your body into ketosis at least once a week at least. So really getting all of that glycogen out of our blood and forcing our body to do a cleanse, whether we're fasting or we're doing a nutritional induced ketosis, super beneficial for us. Whether you're looking to improve your performance or you're just looking to improve your health, brain function, longevity, decrease your risk of cancer, chronic inflammation related illness and symptoms, then ketosis is like the number one thing that you can do for your health. That's all for today. Let me know what you want to hear me break down for you guys next.